Hello, this is Don Milne. I'm making this video to help people find out where to find material to write the stories of the World War II fallen. So I've created this tip sheet, and the tip sheet is divided into a list of the primary information, list of occasional information, list of primary sources, secondary sources, and also some helpful comments. I'm going to go over that tip sheet that I think will be very helpful, especially to new users, to know where to find the material you need to research to include in your story. So this is the tip sheet we created to help you know where to find information to write stories. In the first column we have primary information, so almost every story you'll want to include this information that's in this primary information column. Occasional information is stuff you would not include in every story, but maybe some stories. And where would you find the information? The primary sources shows the first place you would look, and if you're not successful at finding at the primary level, then the secondary sources would be another place you could look for that information. And then I've also added some comments where I think it might be helpful sometimes over to the right. So for instance, where it says occupation of father, some comments. Most mothers did not work outside the home before the war, but you can also find and add that information too if you do see that. Usually that would be if maybe the wife was unmarried, the husband had died, or there was a divorce. You might get some information about the occupation of the mother. So we didn't leave it out on purpose. It's just that that's not as common for the records that you're looking at. So I'm going to go through this item by item to give you an idea of what you're looking for. Date of birth, you can usually find that on Ancestry or Family Search or MyHeritage. Any of those places can find that information from census records. Same thing on these other items. All these can be found from census records. Death of a parent, you may or may not want to include that in the story. It may not be relevant if the parent died 3 or 4 decades later because the story is about the individual. But if the parent died while the subject was still alive, that would be something you may want to make mention. Or it's happened before. The parent heard that the child died in action somewhere, and then they died shortly thereafter. That would probably be relevant. So that's an occasional thing, not always something you put in there. And these other items here, primary information, all these things are things you can include in your story, and this is where you would find them. So early on this tip sheet, there's a lot of stuff you can get from the census. Now when we get to the point where they're starting to enter the military, then you have stuff like the enlistment date and the branch they were in. You can often find the World War II Army enlistment records or the US headstone application. Those, if they're there, you're going to find them on Ancestry. Details about marriage or children, other pre-war details. Find a Grave is a great first source. Newspapers.com is another source you could try to look into. Service number is super important so that we can specifically identify who this person was on military records. Someone with a common name like John Smith, there's going to be dozens, maybe hundreds of John Smiths in the military, so we want to know what their service number is. Honor states is a good place to find that. Final rank, a good place to find that information would be on the headstone application. If not there, then the NARA record, the National Archives records, which you can find copies of on Full 3, the premium version of Full 3. Specific information about the branch they were in, that's going to be different for each one. And these are a little more specific, so I'm actually going to be making a different video for some of these more niche research sources. Unit information, sometimes there's a plane crash involved, sometimes there's a missing aircrew report. There's a place to find this information too. The stuff towards the end of their life, their date of death, burial locations. Find a Grave is a good place to find that information there. So this tip sheet basically walks you through all the different items you'd want to include in the story and where to find it. So let's just take a look at some of these sources. So the key main sources we're going to look at are Ancestry, Family Search, or MyHeritage. They overlap a lot. Ancestry probably has the most. Family Search repeats a lot of what Ancestry has. MyHeritage, we don't have free access to MyHeritage, but if you already have that, you may want to use that. We can get you free access to Ancestry. Family Search is already free for those that want to use that. Find a Grave is a great resource. Newspapers.com, Fold3, and Honor States. Those would be our key main sources. So I'm going to just briefly show you what those look like. So I'm starting with a family search view. If you were doing research on Francis Roland Register, that's his last name, Register, he was in the US Navy. And if you were to search for him on family search, you could eventually get to this page here, which kind of shows a dashboard of information about him. So it's a nice, very individual focused listing of what he looks like. There's also something called Discovery version. So there's something called a new Discovery version. So let's go over here where it says go to new Discovery page and see what it looks like under that format. So the information, a little more presentation look to it, but it's pretty much the same information, just in a different look. So first time you're looking up a name, and they're not all this detailed with this much information, this is kind of a nice look and feel of what you can see. And again, that's on family search. If you were to look up same information on Ancestry and click his name, and then I just went to the page for the census, because over here on the right, these are all the documents that Ancestry has related to Francis Register. So a lot of the same source documents, just not presented quite in the same way as family search. So let's look at Find a Grave and see what that looks like. So here's the Find a Grave page for Francis Register. Here we see someone has added some information that may be relevant. There's a picture of his headstone, and here's a personal picture right here. So you can find information about birth, death, where he's buried at. This information is found on Find a Grave. Newspapers is another good key source if we wanted to find information about someone on newspapers. Here we did a search for Francis Register between the years 1940 and 1950. He happens to live in North Dakota, so we're going to click on that. And these are the articles we have about Francis Register. Now, he was an ace, I believe, so they're going to have some stories about that while he's still alive, and then there's probably going to be a story about his death. So I won't click on these stories, but you can see here from the preview that he does have a number of stories about him that you can find by doing some research on newspapers. The next place we like to look is on Fold3. Here's a Fold3 search for Francis Register. Now in this case he already has a memorial, but if he didn't have a memorial, then we would want to look at these muster rolls, because they're going to tell you different places that he served while he was in the Navy. So he was at the Naval Reserve Aviation Base in Minneapolis. If you click on here, it'll give you more details, but over here it gives kind of a brief indication of where he's at. The Naval Air Station in Jacksonville. Down here you can see the hull designation for a ship he was on. So you can kind of track where someone was if you have the muster rolls, and you can find those on Fold3. One last thing I want to show you is about honor states. Now for honor states, I first did a search for Francis Register and nothing came up. So for some reason his record isn't here. So I'm going to use a different person to show his record. I typed in Howard Deal Merrill, and there's only one person by that name. If you click here, you're going to see his ID, which is his serial number. This is super important to have a service number that we can use to track an individual. Honor States is a great place to find that. So especially for Army names, Fold3 can be a good place to find a service number. I'm doing a search here for a Fred Yamamoto, and I'm looking at the World War II Army and Army Air Force casualty list. If I click on this, it's going to show his name, and the number next to him is his service number, his final rank, and his disposition. So that's a good place to try to find service numbers if you don't find it on honor states. See if you can do search on full 3 in the Army and Army Air Force's casualty list. Now there's some specialty sources that aren't common for every story. They're more unique to a story, like special ones for Navy or other ones that would be useful for Army Air Forces. So I'm going to make a separate video to go over some of those that you would be wanting to use. So I want to thank you again for helping us tell the stories of the World War II fallen. Each of them deserves to have a story that can be easily read at their gravesite. And so these tools should give you the information you need. This tip sheet is available as a spreadsheet, and it's also available as a Word doc. Sometimes some people may want to print out the Word doc so that they can just have a sheet they can have by their side while they're still getting used to how to look for this information. One more thing just to show you on the tip sheet is there's a second tab over here that you might miss if you don't know to look for it. It says Links to Army Division Info. One of our volunteers by the name of Josh Leisure had collected different websites related to specific Army divisions. So not all Army divisions have a unique website dedicated to them, but some of them do. So if you were doing a name on the 30th Division, you could go to this website and maybe find some information that you could use for your story. So we'd like to thank Josh for having created that for us. That's all I have to share in this video, and I hope you're enjoying what you're learning in our boot camp. Thank you.